G'day folks, Rod Moore from Moore Art School and Learn to Paint TV. Welcome to another episode of Learn to Paint TV. Now what we're going to do in this episode is a nice little seascape scene, a little bit of a different view you'd normally get in a seascape, but it's a view where I took a photo some years ago and did a painting of it, and I was inspired by the great Australian artist Arthur Streeton, who had painted pretty much the same view decades before. Arthur Streeton was one of Australia's great impressionist artists, my favourite artist. And so I'd sought out some of the locations where he'd painted, went and took photos and did a painting. So this is an early painting of one of mine from probably 5 or 6 years ago now. And that's the view. So it's an intimate sort of little look down into this bay area here. And I really like, not so much this painting as such, but the subject and the view of that subject. So that's what we're going to do today. And as always, we're going to simplify it right down. I'll just pop it over there so I can see what we're painting. We'll simplify it down. We'll probably even improve on what I did 5 or 6 years ago. And we'll just make it a bit easier for beginners to follow. Going to do it in acrylics. So we're going to just use, a handful of little brushes, our little bristle brushes, which we always use. And some acrylic paint. I'm going to use the Arthur interactive paints. So these ones here. So if you can get a hold of these, then I definitely recommend it. These are a professional acrylic paint, and they're very good to blend with because they open back up with a bit of water. So that's what we're going to use. Going to keep our palette quite simple, and we're going to follow the Moore method of painting, which is just the 3 easy steps, which if you've been following us for a while, you'll understand that. So I've got a larger canvas on what the painting is. This is a 16 by 20, and I've just taped a piece of canvas to the backboard here. And we've got, step 1 for our drawing, we've got our ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson. So let's get underway with step 1, our drawing. I'll just take my small flat brush, swish it around in some water, and as I always do, I like to mix up a nice mauve colour here for the drawing. But it's important when we're just doing this first step 1 of the Moore method is that we keep that paint nice and loose. So we just plenty of water in there. I just picked up a bit extra blue there, but that's okay. A little bit more water. Okay, so that becomes like an ink-like consistency. Now with this painting, I'm just looking at my original there. Around about 1/3 of the way down is where our horizon line sits. So I'll just run that through roughly, somewhere around about there. And on that horizon line is, I think it's Mount Martha. So this is down Portsea, Sorento, part of Victoria. Beautiful part of the world there. So that runs to about there, and then at around about just under the halfway mark, this comes rolling down as a hill here to the beach. Okay, run that out to there, and then the beach sort of sweeps around there, and that just sort of rises up there. So we've got these nice layers of distance in this painting, which is part of the appeal of this painting, I feel. Then this second hill starts just below that point there. So that starts there, and it's going to run to about there, and then that's going to run away that direction there. So it's going to come out there, and then just it drops away to about there, and it's got like a rocky outcrop there, kicks in there, rocky outcrop goes along that way, so you get this sandy beach and so on there, and the rest of it's pretty much a bushy sort of feel. So far we've got basically this one big shape in the background, we've got another big shape here, and we've got a little bay in here is where we're going to have little boats and things. Then we've got a third big shape, which is this one here. That third big shape then has a foreground shape which runs kind of through there. It's a whole lot of bushes and things in there. And then the last big shape, it runs kind of in this space here. It's this tree, which is partly in shadow and it's partly in light, which makes a beautiful composition. Step 2, I'm taking my bigger brush, which we use for blocking in, and we're going to now tackle these big shapes to get that values relationship right. We're going to start off down, actually we'll start here, because this one's going to be a bit warmer. So I'll start here with our dark in this section here. I'll just take a whole lot of blue there and a whole lot of red. We'll mix that up. Now we've got big areas here. I've got a big canvas to cover, so I want big lot to paint. And that's quite a nice dark there. Okay, a little touch of water in here. And what I'm going to do is just this tree, the edges of it a little bit random. So see how I'm just pushing that brush up and letting the hairs of the brush do the work to create those shapes, those interesting sort of edges of the tree. So this is some sort of eucalypt tree that would be growing around the coast area. It's a little bit that sort of hangs out over there. Now let's go with some red and a bit of yellow in there, and a touch of the blue just to keep it honest. Okay, we'll go a little bit more red, a little bit more yellow. Okay, and we'll just block this in. There's a bit of a murky colour at the moment, but we will we'll put some nice highlights and things. And I'm going to run that over that tree just to push it back. So now we know that this is more the foreground area here. Take some of that red. Now the thing is, we don't want too much detail in this foreground area. We want the eye to sort of wander into this painting and some nice little detail work up in here just to engage the eye. See, that's slightly bluer now than what we had before. Just get a little bit more red in there. And I'll just lighten it off with just a tiny little bit of white to start off with. Don't hit that white into it too much too early. Work up to it, okay? So if I pop that there, it's a little bit grey because there's a little bit of that yellow in there as well. Just want to get it a touch bluer. Okay. And this is all bushes on this cliff or hill, you know, all this along the edge here. It's all shrubs and bushes and things. So use the hairs, push them up into the canvas and let the hairs paint bushes. I'm just going to run across to there. Okay, that's good. Stand back and have a look. Going good. Get a bit more blue now. Now we come back to this one here. Same principle applies, only this time more blue and more white into that mix. Okay, we do want a little bit of red in there, but it's got to be cooler and lighter than that one there. Okay, so a touch more blue in there. It's a little bit too blue, sorry, a little bit too warm, a little bit too much red in there. Something like that I'm tipping. Yeah, there we go. And again, run that along there. Don't fuss too much at this edge at this stage because I'm going to put highlight greens, bushes on there, and we can shape up these edges when we get to step 3. Take that, clean pile, some clean white. So this is a cooler blue. Good for like winter's day type of scenes. Let's just try that. You can see that's a very different sort of feel to it. I'm going to add just a pinhead of the ultramarine blue so it's not too different. That little bit of ultramarine blue will just tie us back in with the other colours that we've used. Okay, now notice I paint in bands, big brush, paint it across in a band, and then we get progressively lighter as we go. So I'll tell you how you paint a gradient. Although there's a fair bit of movement in this sky, I'm going to scrub in some clouds into the sky today, I think. Rub And you can see I had there's a bit of red in that brush because I didn't clean it properly, but that's perfectly fine. Just if you press too hard, that'll come out because it's worked its way up the hairs of the brush. Okay. Now, as I get towards that land, I'm going to use mostly white. I'm going to get a little touch of water. Mostly white. I want it to be very, very light. Here and now let's get into the water, which is going to be fairly light, and there's a few different shifts in tone which we can sort of add some of it in now, we'll add some of it in later, and then we can reassess, have we got that tone in the back there right. I think when we add in the highlights, yeah, it should be looking right. So a little bit more titanium white, and I'm going to add up touch of cadmium yellow light for this as well, because we're going to get into, there's a few little patches of green in the water. Okay. And I'm going to add a cobalt turquoise light. You don't have to use this. We'll play around with just getting a few different, variations. I won't use much of it, just tiniest little bit. It may be too strong, so you could use the same thing with the cerulean and the light cadmium yellow. Would give you a similar sort of effect. So don't fuss if you haven't got that color. Now we've got to work around now these shapes. So predominantly our watercolor is going to be that ultramarine blue and white. Going to need lots of the white in there, okay? Because this is going to be fairly light. Okay, it's going to be something like that. And then we'll have little patches of yellow to green it up here and there. Okay. I'm going to load my brush up fairly thick with paint, and then I'm going to come here and I'm going to find that horizon line, which is notice I'm running it in one big horizontal line along that horizon just to get that established. Now I've got to be really careful I don't drag any of that dark back into my light tone for my water. So I might come back to that part sort of last, or delay it as much as I can to let that part dry, and the same along here as well. And now what I want to do is vary the tone up. I'll get a little bit more blue into there and just make those horizontal marks. Don't vary that stroke. Don't be doing vertical strokes. Keep them all fairly horizontal. And I'm using a lot of paint here, big chunks of paint, and applying it quite liberally. So there's some really nice little subtle shifts. It's a bit yellower and greenier there. It's a bit bluer here. The bluer parts will indicate deeper water, and the greener parts are going to hopefully indicate, more sandy, shallow water. Just sneak in amongst this tree here. Now I've got to be careful because I'm standing on the side. I've got to be careful I haven't got that running downhill. Just make sure it's nice and horizontal when you do it. I've got a feeling mine might be, but I'll worry about that as we sort of go to do our finishing touches. I'll get a bit more yellow in there now and just a little pinhead of that turquoise. Don't get carried away with that. See how green that's gone? It's got a nice sort of green tone, and I'll just run that into paint that I've already put there. And as, you know, like it gets closer to the, you know, these sandy beaches and so on, the water gets shallower. Hence, there's more yellow reflecting from the sand, which is what will give it that greenish effect. Okay, I'll get back to more of a blue tone here as well. So I won't just leave it a big patch of green like that. I'll just put some other bluey tones over the top, as you can see. Too green in that section, so I'll paint that through. Don't worry about this edge here because we'll overlap it with foliage. So you can afford to get a little bit rough there. Well, I think we've accomplished step 2. We've got everything blocked in here. It does look a bit blocky at the moment, but as you know, if you've been following me for a while, step 3 is when we start to pull it all together. In step 3, we do our highlights, details, and finishing touches, and we'll just work our way back through the painting, bringing everything into sharper focus where it needs to be, adding details where they need to be, and you'll see this painting really start to come alive in that step. So exciting times ahead. And I think it's on track. I think everything is working pretty well. It's a little bit thin in some of the darks here, so I'll strengthen those back up as well. But otherwise we're on track. So have a go up to this point. Get step 1 and step 2 done. And then we're going to let it dry. So we need to allow probably half an hour minimum to an hour or 2. I'm probably going to leave this for a couple of hours, let it dry, bone dry. And then I'll come back and I'll see you in step 3 after the break. Cheers. Okay, welcome back folks. Step 3 now. I've given this a good chance to dry off completely. And now we're going to do our highlights, details, finishing touches. So we might start with this back mountain here. We'll do the foliage there. Then we'll come in and tackle this one. We'll do the foreground trees, and then we'll come back in and work in some of the little details after that. So in terms of getting this foliage here, we basically want to, just using my big flat brush here, take our blue and our yellow ochre, a little bit of that red, okay. And what we want to do is just find a nice light foliage colour for covering over that distant mountain. It's got to be a little bit on the grey side. We don't want it to be a punchy, vibrant tone. You can see there the colour on the brush there. And what we want to do is just give it a test, okay? So I think a good place to test is right on the edge where it intersects with the sky and so on. And I'm just going to use just the gentlest of touch here. I'm just tapping it on. And what I want to do is make sure that I don't lose all of that underpainting shadow. I want to keep as much of that as we can. Okay. Just thinking about the natural fall of the land is important. And you can see that just along there now, it's pushing this distance, I think it's Mount Martha, pushing that back further into the distance there now, which is what we want. Okay, you can make some of it a bit more clumpy and some of it with that shadow coming through. Right down to the sand. Now I think I'm going to just extend the amount of sand that I've got in there. And there's a couple of little houses showing through, which will indicate that with just the tiniest little dashes of light to indicate the roof in there. Okay, see how that's a nice sort of treetop edge along the top of that mountain there. And all I'm doing is I'm just tapping this big brush, just the few hairs at the end, just light little taps, gets the job done. Let's come to this here now, and I've got a feeling I might want to just pull the water back into here a bit more. I want to keep that part quite dark and this part a little lighter. So let's just take some blue and red in there. Okay, so I'm going to start off going for a darker sort of green. Oop, that's a little bit murky dark. Add a bit more yellow ochre into that. Okay, and I'll just work that into this outer section here, overlapping the water that we've done. Working that down to here. With that, now I'll take my 1-inch brush. I'm going to use the hairs on the end there, and we are going to get some foliage that's going to be a little bit warmer and brighter than what we've got elsewhere. And I'm just pushing that edge up through the paint there. And we're just going to start to build up some of this foliage in here. Get some of that darker green in there as well. Overlapping that shadowy tone. We can't have it all bright and fiery like that, so we'll get some darker greens a bit lower. Now the technique I'm using here, I'm just scrubbing the edge of that brush, and I'm not really concentrating too hard or trying too hard to create any particular shape. I'm really letting the brush determine what it's going to do, you know. Just little soft marks here and there, where the waves will be. And then let's get out the back. Okay, so right out the back, we're going to have these tiny little dots and dashes and things that are going to be little boats. So a little collection of boats way out the back there. And then as we come into this next bay here, we're going to see a bit more detail. They're going to be a bit bigger. And maybe we'll introduce a little bit of colour to them as well. Like so. Take this mix here, plenty of water on the brush, and we now start to introduce our tree trunks. Okay, we just work that in there like so. Keep that tip well loaded. And it's particularly good where they've got these little holes for the water to poke through. They're the perfect spots to run those branches through. And then what we'll do is add a little touch of highlight to those, which is just going to be our white, a little bit of the red. In fact, that's probably a good highlight colour right there. Let me just test that. Now, I don't want this everywhere. And you know what? I think that's about where I'm going to leave this one. Lots of little details extra that we could do, but I think you get the general feel of it. Let's just have a look at the original. Now, it's not going to be exactly the same because obviously this one, when I did this in oils, there's a fair bit more process and time and work gone into it. And it wasn't a demonstration, so it wasn't talking and painting at the same time, which always adds to the complexity, right? But so that's the original, and that's my blown up acrylic version of it. Very rough because, you know, it's only taken, well, it's taken a lot less time. And I've been talking while I've been doing it, so it's a demonstration. But I think the general idea of how to get depth into a nice seascape with that intimate little view down into the bay, I think you get that idea from this painting. Now, if I take off carefully the masking tape here. So there you go, I've just taken off the masking tape so you can see it sort of with a frame look around it there, and I think it's not a bad little demonstration painting. Take a little bit longer with it, work your way through it, maybe detail up down here a bit more, use the reference photo, but I think this is a good little seascape painting for anyone to have a go at, and definitely worth trying. It gives you a different view of a seascape. That's what I like about this painting. It's an intimate sort of sneaky look down into the valley there. And I think you'll enjoy trying this one. So make sure you drop by our website, www.learntopainttv. I'll see you next time on Learn to Paint TV. Cheers.